Well, good morning and welcome to Civic Waves, the show where we break down the issues shaping our communities and our state in plain language. I'm your host, Mir.I.am, and today we are joined by Senator Natalie Murdock, who represents Durham and Chatham counties in the North Carolina Senate. Senator Murdock has made history as the first black woman under 40 elected to the North Carolina Senate. And since taking office back in 2020, she's become a leading voice on economic development, education, transportation, environmental policy, voting rights, governmental accountability, and so many other things. Now, before serving in Senate, she worked in the state government, community engagement, and economic development, bringing both policy and grassroots experience to the Triangle. Today on Civic Waves, we're discussing two major issues that are affecting North Carolinians: the ongoing state budget negotiations and a series of voting and election administrative changes that continue to generate a lot of debate across the state. Senator Murdock, welcome to Civic Waves.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mir. Thanks for having me. And thanks for having this program so that we can talk directly to the people.
So it's so funny because I see you all the time on my feed. My algorithm apparently loves you.
Yeah, that's a good sign. Got to crack that algorithm. It's
and
rough.
I'm like, I'll be happy to see you, but also I'll be like, Lord, what didn't happen now?
True.
Natalie on my feed.
True.
So it's some shenanigans afoot.
Always some shenanigans. Always.
And
yes.
so before we get into the shenanigans, tell me a little bit about your journey. Like, what inspired you to get into public service?
Yeah, the journey to me, even though, for some folks happened somewhat young, really was a long time coming. I'm the daughter of a nurse and a social worker. And even before that, my grandmother, my dad's mom, she actually started a cafeteria strike. She was a cafeteria worker in Guilford County. At the time, as black women, they were only making $1.50 an hour.
Gosh.
And that was $1 less than the white women they worked with. And so they started a strike and got that up to $3 an hour. And then her two daughters, my Aunt Charlotte and Aunt Martha, they marched with the ANC4 and were arrested in Greensboro. So their names are etched in the Greensboro Civil Rights Museum. And my dad was also that person that came to all the city council and county commission meetings. And if there was an issue in Greensboro under Mayor Yvonne Johnson, may she rest in peace, my grandmother would call her directly. So I came from a family that was very active and engaged. They weren't elected officials, but they were very, very active. And so I definitely think through osmosis got a lot of that, but was also a natural progression of I came from government. So I went from being a bureaucrat to an elected official, but got the itch to work on campaigns and to get active. And then people said, you need to run. We need you to run. Yeah. And after about the 17th call, I filed to run for Senate in 2019 and won in 2020, taking 2 years off of my service, won in 2020.
That's incredible. Yeah, you definitely got it in your DNA.
Got it in the blood.
For sure. And, we need leaders like you to be able to fight a good fight for us and continue on because, everybody feel like everybody has their thing in their place.
Yes.
Some people are in the streets and then some people are in the meetings. And so we need everybody.
Yeah, we need all of it. Yeah, we need all of it. I really pride myself on connecting those dots. I call myself an activist legislator. I will just call and check in with folks in the community to say, hey, what's going on? And we don't have enough of that in our elected leaders. So really to connect the dots between advocacy and policy. And that's also a big part of why I ran for the General Assembly. I think we need more folks that do still have their ears to the community and not just wealthy donors and corporations and rich people. Yeah. We need to listen to everyday people as well because they're the ones that are impacted the most by what we do in Raleigh and have the least amount of time to drive to Raleigh to tell us when we're not making the cut.
Now, what district do you represent?
So 20. So I have South Durham and all of Chatham County. Through redistricting, picked up all of Chatham County in 2022. So when I first ran, I had downtown Duke, South Durham, and in redistricting now I have South Durham, but that's still South Point Mall, Woodcroft. So still over 130,000 people in Durham. Chatham County is around 70,000 folks. So that gets me to the 200,000 people that I represent in Raleigh. So all your state senators represent around 200,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
A lot of people. A lot of people.
That's a lot of people. All right, so let's get into it. So this budget.
Yes.
We still don't have a finalized budget. We're the only state. And I'm just like, it's some really embarrassing states out here. So like, how did we end up being the last one? And it doesn't seem like it's a lot of urgency. It's like so many other things. Well, let's go ahead and take away this voting location at NC State. And let's do all these other things that don't make sense instead of passing the state budget. So for people who are listening right now, they might not even know, like, what does that mean? Like, we still functioning? Like,
yes.
is this affecting my everyday life? So us not having a state budget, what does that actually really mean?
Yes, and thank you for the question, because understandably it can be very confusing for people to say, why does it matter that we don't have a state budget? What does it mean that we don't have a state budget? So there are two different timelines. Our last true budget was 2023-2024. So you'll hear a lot of us say it's been over a year. It's really been over 1,000 days. It has been over 1,000 days, because you do have to go back to that 2023-2024 timeframe. And this is honestly the perfect year to see how it has an impact, because we all know how much more money we're paying to fill up our gas tank, to get our groceries, housing, homeowners insurance, car insurance, everything is going up. So if your pay has not been touched since 2023, you are really feeling it. So when it comes to our teachers, our retired workers, even when you're driving up and down the highway and see the highway patrol, none of those folks have gotten their raises. They haven't gotten their cost of living increase.
So they mad.
When we don't have it, very big mad. And they are emailing us and calling us. And that's why you saw that May 1st, when all the teachers came to Raleigh, they have not gotten the increase that they're supposed to have. And with inflation alone, you're looking at about a 3 to 3.5% increase. So first, what's being proposed is not enough, but you're still stuck on that 2023, 2024, kind of pay scale. So we really are not cutting it when it comes to state government. So what that means, they changed the law some years ago. We don't have to have a budget by June 30, which we actually need to bring that back. That's not a good thing. And government having that pressure really motivates people when we really have to finish our budget by 2030. So when we don't have a budget, you default back to your previous budget. So that's why we're into the 2023-2024. So if your funds are not recurring, such as Medicaid, for people that use Medicaid services, a lot of people use Medicaid more than folks even know. That means that money has not been renewed. So the first thing we did when we came back to the General Assembly this year was authorize over $300 million for Medicaid. Medicaid was going to run out of money. And more than anything, it's just not how government should function. It's falling on your local counties. All the talks you all have been hearing around property taxes, and yes, people want to keep more money in their pocket. But these counties and cities, they're still having to pass a budget. So when you see local nonprofits that can't get funded, or you can't get pay increases for city staff, or you can't increase your funding for your teachers, these counties are coming up with $10-20 million as a result of what the state isn't doing, since we don't have a state budget. Child care is another one I want to highlight. $80 million is what we need to provide support to low-income families, so that it's easier for that provider to provide that child care. It is sitting in the budget that we don't have. So that's one direct example of, if you have children, you're feeling it, even if you don't know you're feeling it, because it makes it easier for everyone to function if we can get that support for those families in need for child care support from the state.
Is there any hope of us getting a budget passed anytime soon? Like, where do we stand?
I do think it will be in the late June, early July timeframe. I do think it's possible we'll have one by June 30. The big debate, back to the property tax debate we're having, is the conservatives, particularly in the Senate, conservatives as in Republicans, they want to cap taxes. And again, everybody wants more money in their pocket. But if you want to trust the water you drink from the water fountain and not have bumpy roads and, have the schools that we want to have, it's going to cost money. And we currently have one of the lowest tax rates, even when you include your local property tax rate in the nation. So we're actually very competitive. Corporate income tax is only 2.5%. They want that to go to 0. So that's going to cost us money. And without that, we don't have the revenue we need for government to function. So that's when the budget talks really fell apart, because you can't have a debate about a budget if you don't agree on the revenue. If you don't know how much money you're going to have in 2027, 2028, 2026, then there is no budget to talk about. So that's essentially what the standoff was for a whole year, was the House wants to say, let's not be so aggressive. Let's leave the rates where they are. They're very competitive. Leave corporate. I think the corporate rate is now at 2%. I think personal is at 3.99. They're saying leave that where it is so that we can comfortably get to 2040. The Republicans in the Senate are saying, no, let's move forward. We want to zero out the corporate income tax, and they want to cap the personal income tax at 3.5%. Again, it sounds great, but the buck has to stop somewhere.
Because, why the personal higher than the corporate? Thank you.
Thank you. Why would a teacher and a firefighter pay more in taxes than your corporation? And I say that as the one that
when you
represents.
were going over the numbers, I said, wait a minute, excuse me, that 2.5 and 3.9, why are we the ones that are paying more?
And I represent the research triangle park. These huge companies, they're not asking for this. They know these things cost. They know that air isn't free and roads aren't free. These things cost. Yeah. They know they need to pay taxes. They're aware of it. So.
That's scary because anytime I hear Republicans trying to decrease taxes, it automatically sends off a red flag because it's not for us.
Nope.
It's not for the people.
We don't benefit.
It's like, okay, so yeah, you're going to lower ours 1%. Oh, they're going to get zeroed out altogether? Okay, now it's making sense. And like you said, these are taxes that are going to our roads and our water, fires.
Yes, yeah, your local fire and police department. And actually, the fire department is a very good one. When you cannot have enough police and fire, you feel it in your tax bill because your insurance rate goes up. Even if you're a renter, like I'm still renting, they say, where's the closest fire station? Because that impacts your insurance rate. So when you don't have enough of that, it's more expensive even for you to get insurance. Yeah. We're all impacted by that. And if the city can't afford it, then they're not going to be able to provide it, even though so many of these cities, all the cities in my district are growing, and we need all of that.
I think that, nobody loves to pay taxes, but when you understand what your taxes go towards, and they are the normal things that we need for our everyday life, it's important for us to really lock in on like, okay, what are these taxes that they're going to cut? What are we going to be losing? So, and I feel like I don't even really notice the amount that I pay in property taxes or whatever. So it's a minor inconvenience, but when you really look at the big picture, you need those things.
So true. And what we should be doing is providing targeted relief. We can increase our programs for seniors. We definitely want to keep our seniors in their home, our veterans, for first-time homeowners. So you can have targeted programs, but still generate revenue. And that's the conversation to have instead of across the board, everyone is going to pay the same rate.
I never really thought about it a lot before, but right now with this current administration, I'm really frustrated with the use of my taxes. It's mainly federal. Listen, I don't care about an American Blue reflecting pool, golden arches, sending billions to war. I care about healthcare, families being able to put food on the table, childcare, education, paying off these student loans, homelessness, affordable housing, and rent. My God, I don't care about a ballroom. I don't care, and it's just I just feel like my taxes are being abused. So a couple of percent in order to be able to have roads that I can drive on and things like that. It makes sense to have.
So true. So true.
We are here with Senator Natalie Murdock representing Durham and Chatham counties, over 200,000 people. Some of y'all are listening right now. Hey, when we return, we're going to discuss voting and all the changes that are being proposed to your elections. I'm Mir.I.am, and you're listening to Civic Waves. Welcome back to Civic Waves. I'm your host, Mir.I.am, and today our special guest is Senator Natalie Murdock representing Durham and Chatham counties. Okay, so voting in North Carolina, a lot of proposed changes on the table, and it feels like insanity a little bit. It's giving what was the reason. A lot of it goes back to when Governor Josh Stein and Attorney General Jeff Jackson were elected back in 2024. There was some big changes to the powers that they were able to have.
Absolutely.
And there were a lot of powers that were stripped from them. And so we're living with the results of that now with some of the changes that are trying to be made. For people that are listening right now, can you just give a quick, brief overview of what happened with some of the powers that were taken away?
I sure will. And I'm glad that we're starting there because when we say elections matter, and the irony of them doing that in the General Assembly, both Governor Stein and Attorney General Jackson received well over 50%. They had very high margins. It wasn't close. It wasn't a nail biter where we had to have a recount. So the state elects these two people just for the General Assembly to come back and say, we don't want you to do your job, is essentially what they did. They made it harder for the Attorney General to file certain lawsuits in regards to voting. They made it more difficult, or they changed the rules where Governor Stein, he typically appoints the chairs of all of the boards of elections, and not just him, whoever the governor is. So for Governor Pat McCrory, our last Republican governor, it was his right to appoint the chairs for all these boards of elections. The reason that that's important is your board of elections determines where you vote, your voting schedule, if you can have Sunday voting for those of you that do souls to the polls and all of that. Your local boards of elections have a lot of power. They changed the rules to where the governor can no longer appoint. So for all 100 counties, the governor no longer has the ability to appoint who the chair of those boards are. The other really big change that's harmful is they went in and fired the former elections director for for the state board of elections. Now we have more partisan, in this instance, conservative staff, and that's concerning. Elections should not be a partisan matter. When I was a part of, at the local level, getting folks appointed, we look for folks that would be fair, that would not be biased. Some of them even had a little bit of a judicial background that would be fair. Now you're seeing a lot more party politics in elections, and that's why you're seeing some of our campuses lose their voting elections. It's directly connected to these policies that they've recently changed, directly connected.
There have been so many concerning things that have happened as a result, but you were talking, I saw you were talking earlier on your Instagram about HB 958.
Yes.
And oh my goodness, it just seems absolutely terrible.
Yes, so many bad things, and hopefully folks saw there were a lot of groups that were not only opposing this bill, but things move really quickly because to address that, legislation should not move this fast. North Carolina is a state of 11 million people. For you to drop a bill on a Friday and it go to committee on Tuesday, people work. Who can leave from Murphy to Mineo and Asheville and Asheboro and even Greensboro, where I'm born and raised, to say, okay, you have to physically come to Raleigh to speak against these bills? The average person can't do that. Mm-hmm. So we had to get the word out really quickly. There was a public comment portal, but even when you do come to Raleigh, it gets better. You get all of 60 seconds to speak on these bills. 60 seconds. What are you going to do with that? In other states, you will see people go all over the state, have hearings in various areas if you're going to have such major changes. But a lot of changes in this bill is really going to reduce transparency. It could even have increased the dark money that is in politics. It's changing the limit of funds that have to be reported. We know that we need to get big money out of politics. It'll make it easier for folks to do that. If you are a member of the board of your local board of elections, it's saying you cannot even encourage people to vote, which to me infringes upon their First Amendment right, just to speak up. So it does all sorts of things. It's also going to make it more difficult for your ballot to count. Even if it was received on election day, they're saying it has to physically be received by 7:30 p.m. We cannot control the mail. And that was the second time they changed that. First, they went in, even if your ballot is postmarked by election day. And there was a time where if it was received, 1 or 2 days later, it still would be counted. Now it has to be received by election day. In this bill, 958, they're saying it needs to be there by 7:30 p.m. What in the world is that supposed to mean? Then you also are going to get less time to cure a ballot. So sometimes people do make mistakes, and they have every right to go to their local board of elections and say, hey, I need to make sure my social security number is correct or whatever that may be. And that's current law has been for years. They want to make it more difficult to do that. And the reason that is relevant is a direct reflection of what happened with Justice Riggs. So for folks that aren't aware, she won by a little under 800 votes, and they were going back and forth in the courts for over 6 months. So a lot of what you see in this legislation is saying those ballots will not count. We are a state with a lot of veterans. It may be harder for those that are active duty to have their ballots to count, which is insane. So for those military personnel that are overseas, they will have to provide more information for their ballot, which might sound great. But to make this change in June, when elections are this fall, to really sum it up, it is going to make it harder for these ballots to count. You'll hear the other side say, oh, this is about, making sure we don't have fraud and, that our elections are fair. No, it is not. It's creating more confusion because they want to change the rules in the middle of the game. And that is what this bill will do. And when you put that alongside the changes at the Board of Elections, we're seeing that we're losing polling locations on these campuses, not just, your A&Ts and your HBCUs. You're seeing it now most recently at NC State. You're seeing it at App State out west at Western Carolina University. The Western Carolina University one is really crazy too because their campus is larger than the city. So to say where the most people are, they cannot vote, then the change for NC State, those students will now have to walk across a 6-lane street to go vote when it used to be on campus. So I call it the death of democracy by 1,000 cuts because they're changing these policies virtually every month. So the average person may think it doesn't really matter, but when you add up all of these changes, it results in making it harder for people to vote right here in North Carolina.
I thought we were supposed to be making it easier for people to vote.
You would think so?
I don't understand why there would ever be a need to remove polling sites that are popular and that are in use. I've read one of the excuses was something about parking, and it's just like, really?
And parking is not an issue.
Yeah, parking is not an issue.
Because we deal with it. I represent North Carolina Central University in my Senate district, and during elections, there are spots just for people to vote. So whenever you have these locations on a college campus, they work with the campus to ensure that you can park during these elections. And you can just look at the photos. I mean, the last Saturday of voting at NC State, the lines were wrapped around the block. So you know that it is a heavily utilized location. And to say now you want to change it in the summertime, knowing that we're having a U.S. Senate race, we're having a Supreme Court, a lot of these legislative races. So also the timing of it, when these have national implications. Getting Governor Cooper in office as U.S. Senate, that impacts the balance of the whole Senate. Same for Congress. So when they make these changes, it also has a national impact. And I would argue that's a part of why they're making these changes as well. Same for the Supreme Court. It will take, for folks on my side, until 2028 for us to get a Supreme Court back. So I would argue they want to make it very hard for Justice Earls to remain on the Supreme Court. So a lot of this, they are targeting very directly targeting current sitting elected officials and trying to stack the deck to make it harder for people to have a voice this November.
And to just get frustrated and go home, or like if this place,
this
polling location isn't close enough, or eliminating some of the numbers of days on early voting.
Yes.
It's really scary about the post office because they're not being held accountable any longer.
No.
If you don't receive your mail, you can't even sue. So it's just a matter of all the guardrails, all the accountability is pretty much being thrown out of the way in order for them to allow people to act however they want to. And if your ballot doesn't get there in time, oh well, it is what it is. And a lot of these places aren't even staffed enough to be able to handle that number of ballots and things like that. So we all know what's going on. So what can be done about this bill? What can the people do? Does speaking up or going to any of these hearings or town halls or any of these things actually matter?
It really does. I know it is frustrating for folks. It's frustrating for me. Even as a sitting senator, I get frustrated, especially when people only get 60 seconds to vote. But I do want to give a shout out to folks that even when we had the redistricting of that first congressional district, we had people that did make that drive 3-4 hours just to have their voices heard. The reason we need to get them on record is lawsuits will definitely be filed. When we get it added to the public record, they won't have the ability to say, we didn't hear any opposition, people didn't have any issues. When we get on the record, you removing this polling location from my county is going to have X, Y, and Z impact, or it is difficult for me to physically go to vote. I need to have the opportunity for my ballot to count as long as it is postmarked by that specific day. That's the level of detail that we need when lawsuits are filed, because we cannot allow them to say, we didn't hear, any negative feedback. I kind of chuckle. A popular phrase you'll hear in Raleigh is, we are not aware of any opposition. We do not want them to be able to say that with this bill. And so when they receive thousands of comments, when we take these folks to court or when other folks take them to court, it is going to be very, very helpful to make our case, because the time will come when a lot of this will get better, over time. The Supreme Court won't be the way it is forever, or the state Supreme Court. So you want to have that public record documented so that when these changes are made, you have justification to restore what has happened, to put things back the way that to actually make them better than they have been for the last few years as we continue to attack these voting rights across the state. So they've got to keep stepping up. And the reason that we posted it is we do want comments from across the state. We don't want it. Yes, I love Durham. It doesn't need to be all Durham and all Raleigh. We need folks from Wadesboro and out in eastern North Carolina. We need folks from all over the state to let our legislators know that they're not happy.
Is there anything that is like the number one concern for you in terms of voting?
The number one concern, honestly, is what you mentioned, is that people will just throw their hands up and give up. And they can't do that. Columbus County is another one where they are, well, even Granville, that's a closer example, where if they get rid of that site in Creedmoor, I believe that's the highest turnout, for the Black folks that live in Granville County. So I don't want people to say, oh, it's 30 minutes for me to drive and vote, I'm just not going to. We have to beat them at their own game and vote in such strong numbers, because with a lot of these elections, the numbers are on our side. If people come out and vote, they can make a big difference. There were millions of people in 2024 that just did not vote. They just stayed home. The same thing happened in 2016. And so nothing will change if people don't vote. So my biggest fear is people will just become apathetic, throw their hands up and say, whatever I do, it won't matter. And it does, and we've seen it. To end on a positive, in another state, in Georgia, they did not go forward with their new maps. They came, they spoke, they were very vocal. In South Carolina, they were able to preserve the seat for Congressman Jim Clyburn. So we still have our people power, and they're strategic in that they want people to give up. So don't play into their hand. And as we are here for Juneteenth, our ancestors endured so much worse. We don't have to.
They didn't have cars to be able to drive. They had to walk.
They had to walk till their feet bled, deal with billy clubs and fire hydrants and bulldogs. We don't deal with any of that stuff. We are inconvenienced to go 30 minutes with carpool. We need to figure it out. Uber, honestly, that's a real thing. There will probably be codes where we can get people where they need to go, get the vans and the buses, whatever we need to do. We're gonna have to figure it out. And our ancestors endured so much worse when they were trying to vote. So we can do it.
I think one of my frustrations is nobody asked you to do all these things. All these things that you're implementing are unpopular.
Yep.
You know, the public wants it to be easier to be able to vote. We want more days. We want more hours. We want things like souls to the polls and DJs to be able to be at the polls to entertain. It's these things that are happening and changing, they have their own personal agendas. They're not representing their constituents at all.
So true.
But when I look at the numbers of the NC House and the Senate, and then I look at the governor and the attorney general and a lot of the other positions, I'm like, what is going on here in North Carolina? And I know gerrymandering is a big part of that. In this upcoming election, is there any potential for the Democrats to be able to get a majority in this state?
It definitely is. And unfortunately, in the Senate, they really did a number on our map, so we're still going to fight, and it's still possible. But particularly in the House, they really have the opportunity to pick up 3 to 4 seats, which is huge. They could either be very close to a majority or hit a majority by 2030. Even if it takes the House until 2030, that's still helpful. When I first became a senator in 2020, we were in the minority, but not the super minority. The reason that's important, you can negotiate, you can hold bills. If the governor vetoes a bill like this horrible voting bill, if we had literally one more seat in the Senate, we would be able to uphold a veto in the House and the Senate to prevent that from becoming law. So I definitely think next year things will get better, which again is why they're pushing this law this year. They know that they're probably going to get their butts kicked at the polls this fall. So they want to make it very difficult for people to vote because they know the writing is on the wall. And these are national trends from Florida to Texas to South Carolina, Georgia. Tennessee. People are voting. They're Tennessee. They're voting. They're motivated. And instead of having ideas and actually talking to people, they want to make it easier for people they think will vote for them to vote and want to make it harder for students and people of color. And even some of our seniors, it's going to make it harder for them too. This is going to be a good year. I can feel it. I myself have already been at various areas across the state, and we will wrap up probably early July, and I will be all over the state advocating for not only people running for House and Senate, but for the statewide races. Can't stress enough how important it is for us to keep Justice Earls on the bench. She is our only Black woman on our North Carolina Supreme Court. We can do it. And two, with the numbers, the reason they're doing this in the House and the Senate, Democrats actually got over 50% of the vote as far as the total. So for us to be in the super minority in the Senate, when numerically we earned 50.5% of the vote, and we are in the super minority. If that doesn't show you gerrymandering is real, our maps are so bad. And if we had a real Supreme Court, they would strike our maps down. They would. If we had fair maps in the Senate, the state Senate specifically, we would get 3 seats overnight. And we would just be fighting for those last 2.
Is that something that can become a reality anytime soon?
It can, which is the importance of keeping Justice Earls. We had to keep Justice Riggs, keep Justice Earls, pick up a few more seats in the Supreme Court, and they will not only strike the maps down, they will order someone to draw them fairly. So that's when we had that 7-7 split in U.S. Congress. They said, you all have to draw a fair map. And we had one. And it wasn't slam dunk seats. Like now, District Attorney Wiley Nickel is a great example. It was a seat where you had to fight. And that's fair. You know, Democrats have to make their case. Republicans make their case. And then you have some independents. Now, the reason that gerrymandering is so bad, you can have a very extreme candidate that if they wanted to, would never have to go talk to anyone in their district because the district is that bad that they can just be a name on the ballot and continue to win. And that's not great for democracy for anybody. Even if you're a Republican, you shouldn't want that. And that's why they're not as responsive, because they know I literally don't have to leave my house because you're going to continue to vote me in. All they have to do is worry about a primary. But over time, 2 things. Not only will we get better maps, the demographics are changing. North Carolina, so many people are moving here. And unfortunately, lack of affordable housing. You have people that can't afford to live even in Durham anymore. That's why Mebane, Alamance County is changing a lot. So all of that over time, we will be able to catch up, but particularly in the House, I think they're going to have a very good year this fall. And in the Senate, we do have the potential to go from 20 to 22. So we'll be back to negotiating and being able to fight back. So we'll get there.
We need more millennials in
yes.
public office.
So many more.
These boomers, like, what are we doing? And we got some silent generation people that are still in Congress.
For it to be 2020, and I filed at 35 and filed at 36. I cannot believe it took until 2020 to get a black woman under 40, and I tell young people now, where's the black woman in her 20s? We'll wait, so much farther to go to make sure people have all sorts of representation to learn. Or if not, it's going to be a bottleneck if we don't start bringing in new voices.
Yeah. Come on, silent generation. Like, that's insanity. I mean, to have watched from segregation to the Civil Rights Act and all these things, and you're still there.
Oh, yes.
And in many cases, fighting against all the progress and all that change, it's insanity. We have had with us Senator Natalie Murdock, representing Durham and Chatham counties. 200,000 people. That's crazy. No pressure.
No whatsoever.
Where can people follow you, stay up to date, see all your Instagram video updates and all the things? You do a very good job of keeping us informed.
Thank you. Folks can follow me on all platforms at Natalie4NC on Facebook. X, unfortunately, I'm still over there. Y'all, we got to bring some light to that platform. Instagram and TikTok. And please help me out with TikTok. I am 10 away from hitting 10,000. So please follow me on TikTok, Natalie FORNC.
I think we can get that done.
Give me the 10 for Juneteenth. Get the 10,000.
Yes, for Juneteenth. Go ahead and hit that follow button. Senator Murdock, we appreciate you stopping through Civic Waves.
Thank you so much, Mir. Thanks for having me.
I'm Mir.I.am. Be sure to join us every Sunday morning for more Civic Waves.